Thank you for joining us for yet another important and spectacular discussion here with the Speaker of the National Assembly, none other than the Honorable Manzoor Nadir. And in this conversation, we'll be discussing everything Parliament. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for joining us.
Shukwan, thank you for being with us once again. The first time for the 13th Parliament, I think.
Yeah, the
Yes.
first time for the 13th Parliament. We're at a critical juncture in our country, Mr. Speaker, where the role of the Parliament continues to play a very critical role in everything that we do. And we both think that it's important for the Guyanese population to have a good understanding of what Parliament does and essentially the role it plays in our everyday life. So the first thing I want to ask you, someone was to ask you, what is Parliament? What would be your response to them?
Right. So that's simple question has a long history, and our Westminster parliamentary system has its genesis in the United Kingdom, and it started with a conflict between people wanting more representation and the nobility headed by the king. And so this evolved into this House of Commons, House of Lords, and the King representing the Parliament of the United Kingdom. And more particularly, the engine and structure that drove democracy. And I normally say Western style democracy. So it's a lot of history. And every year, tens of thousands of Guyanese are born. 15,000 children writing grade 6 exam. So you have to constantly keep informing our people on what is Parliament, what is the National Assembly, what is the role of members of Parliament, democracy, what our Constitution says about our rights. So it's quite a lot. And thank you for engaging us in this particular conversation on the functions of members of Parliament, on the National Assembly, on the role of the Speaker.
Yeah, yeah. There is a difference that you pointed out that I wanted us to focus and zone in a little bit on, and that's the difference between Parliament and the National Assembly. What exactly differentiates those two terms?
But first, let me go back to the Constitution. Article 50 of the Constitution establishes the supreme, important word, supreme organs of democracy in our country. And those are Parliament, the President, and Cabinet. Those are the supreme organs of democracy. Article 51 of the Constitution says there shall be a Parliament of Guyana which consists of the President and the National Assembly. And many times people use Parliament and National Assembly synonymously,
Yeah.
right, as the same thing. It's not. Parliament literally is the law making function of our state. In the National Assembly, you have bills are presented and those bills are passed, but they're not law. When the president assents or signs onto that bill, then you have an act of parliament. Before that, when the bill is approved by the National Assembly, you just have a bill approved by the National Assembly. It's not law. When the president puts his signature to it, we have an act of parliament. That is the law making function of our country. So the important distinction between the two. So parliament is the big thing making laws. The National Assembly passes bills. The president signs those bills.
And makes it an act of Parliament.
An act of parliament.
There is this idea that Parliament is closed. I've heard that in the public domain. How often should Parliament open, Mr. Speaker?
Well, first of all, Parliament is only closed from the 10th of August to the 10th of October. That's when we go into recess. We don't even say close. We go into recess from the 10th of August to the 10th of October. Parliament is never closed otherwise. Remember again, Parliament is the President and the National Assembly, the lawmaking function. It suits many persons, including some members of Parliament, to mislead people and confuse people. And the confusion comes when they say Parliament is closed, as against we did not have a sitting of Parliament for a particular period of time. So they willfully put the two together as Parliament and the sittings of the National Assembly. The work of the National Assembly never ceases between the 10th of October and the 10th of August. The work continues. So, what the National Assembly work entails? We receive questions to ministers, we receive petitions, we receive motions, we receive bills, we receive the Auditor General's reports, we receive the reports from commissions, our rights commissions. Those come to the Speaker, they don't go to the ministers in the past. What are important? Important is questions and motions brought by any member.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the work of the National Assembly and Parliament. Important is the process of bringing bills to Parliament. And that primarily is the function of the executive, primarily. So, how our democracy works? We go to the elections, and the parties at elections, they will present a manifesto. And they will say that I promise to paint every building higher than 3 floors pink, right? So we want pink to stand up. And we just don't want it as a policy, we want it as a law. So if you don't paint your building pink, if it's 3 floors or higher, you're breaking the law. If it's a policy, well, then we can enforce it. It's just a policy. All we can apply is administrative frustration. So in Parliament, we pass laws. So the party goes, all parties go with a manifesto. When they win, the job now is to transfer those manifesto promises into policies and laws. And we had an ideal one, the Development Bank,
Yeah.
which was a manifesto promise of the government, which has now migrated onto the order paper at the last sitting of Parliament, the fourth sitting of Parliament, for its first reading. And even that has a gestation period because you have to take your promise, you have to go back to the people with consultations. Out of the consultations, you have to look at the draft. For the draft, you may want to look at best practices around the world. You may want to look at similar legislation from different countries, especially similar countries with Westminster systems.
Right.
And then you do a draft and send it to a cabinet subcommittee. And they may make changes and send it back for redrafting. And from that, then it goes to cabinet. And once cabinet approves it, it goes on to the order paper for first reading. That has a gestation period. So while we may not have had a sitting since the budget debate, the work of Parliament the lawmaking function of Parliament never ceased. Members of Parliament went out among the people. They heard the calls of the people. They sent questions on behalf of the people. Remember, the House, the National Assembly is a house of representatives of the people. I think the quota may have been 6 or 7,000 per seat, right? Representing that block of people. So it is the duty of every member of parliament to go out, consult, hear the concerns, because democracy is dynamic, it's not static. It's not you present a policy, that's it after elections, you forget about anything else, you pass those and wait 5 years. There's dynamic interchange.
So some people, Mr. Speaker, might say the questions that come may not be as much to take up the time of the Parliament. How many questions, in fact, has the Parliament office been dealing with over the last few months?
The parliament has rules by which they operate. And for the National Assembly, we have the standing orders, those are the rules. And it allows for any amount of questions to be tabled, answered in written form. There's no limit. But for oral questions, it's 40 minutes. Questions that require oral replies by ministers, it's only 40 minutes. But you could have as many questions. So, what has happened since Parliament was convened on November 3rd? We have received over 400 questions from members of Parliament. And then the clerk will read those questions against the rules, the standing orders of the questions. And he has to go through, I think there are about 19 or 20 criteria. A question cannot anticipate something that's coming. A question can be based on a news report. A question has to be factual. A question can seek the opinion of a minister. It can impute on the integrity of the House or a minister. So the clerk has to read everything against those. And he will reject, and he may have rejected over 150 of them. Send it back to the MPs, telling them where it impinges on the standing orders. But outside of that, we, the Speaker, looked at 267 questions that were referred to him by the clerk. So you first meet the clerk will send them back. When they meet the standard, the clerk will pass them on to in his view, pass them on to the Speaker.
So that's 267 questions since the 13th Parliament started.
Yes,
just the other day.
that reached the desk of
That
the
reached the
Speaker.
desk of the Speaker.
The Speaker will convene a discussion with the clerk, and we will go through the questions. And of course, we'll have researchers. Somebody may say, I found this on www.shaquingill.com, and the site never existed. So we have to have researchers now check the veracity of all the statements in the questions, right? That takes time, a lot of time, right? And so over 150 of those questions qualify to go on the audit paper. And for it to germinate, gestate, mature, it takes 21 days. So from the time the Speaker approves a question, it has 21 days before it could be answered. Because the question goes to a minister. The minister now has to get his staff, do the research, give it to the minister. The minister has to prepare the answers, either written or orally. And so in the last Parliament, the last sitting of Parliament, we had 30 questions being answered, 20 by written answers, and 10 orally. But that's just one part of the parliamentary order paper for that sitting.
Right.
You had a statement by the Prime Minister. You had, I think, 4 audited reports of agencies presented. Now, these are now public documents. Once a report is tabled, it becomes a public document. It's no longer a document in a ministry under lock and key. Once it's tabled, it becomes public. MPs can scrutinize it, the public can scrutinize it, and these reports go up on our website,
Right.
right? People can research them. We had reports tabled, I think, 4 sets of reports tabled. We had, um, I received 2 reports from the Women and Gender Equality Commission that were tabled. So this is all part of the work of
Right.
the Parliament and the National Assembly. And I say Parliament first because it involves everyone. It involves the executive, the minister, the and having served in cabinet, I understand when we're going to table a report in Parliament, it goes to to the cabinet first. Thus, the president, who's the chairman of cabinet, also gets a chance. So these reports form part of the parliamentary democracy process that we have. So a lot of hue and cry being made about sittings of the National Assembly, but they cloak it in the form of our democracy is in desperate peril because we don't have sittings of the parliament. But did we stop questions from coming? Did we stop reports from being scrutinized? Did the National Assembly stop receiving reports? Were was the speaker on vacation for the last 3 months and receiving a salary? But more particularly, even if he did, members of parliament are not full time persons. They have to keep another job. Every speaker prior to me, and I do something else. But because of our commitment to the office and the people we serve, it's more than a full time job.
Yeah.
But the law doesn't say so. The policy says so.
Mr. Speaker, I want to ask you as we wrap up our conversation. One of the other things that happened at the last sitting was the selection of committees. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So our parliament has 14 committees, right? And it's unique. It's unique in the Caribbean, the Commonwealth Caribbean, very unique, because we have standing committees on economic services, foreign relations, social services, economic services, and the security sector. Standing committees. Most parliaments don't have that. We also have other committees, the Public Accounts Committee, which is the committee that scrutinizes government expenditure. And one day we can talk about that process in the Public Accounts Committee, right? They have other committees, the Privilege Committee, the Standing Orders Committee. That committee would revise the rules of Parliament. So last Friday, the 5th of June, after the plenary session or the 4th sitting of Parliament, a meeting was convened to nominate the members of the remaining 13 committees of Parliament. We had the first committee, the Committee of Selection, was constituted because the committee, we can talk about the committee system on another program. So we did nominate, and on Monday, the Speaker has to convene the first meeting of most of the committees which he doesn't chair. So a chairperson could be elected. So on Monday, we have scheduled the meetings to elect the chairperson. I think it might be about 10 committees which the Speaker don't chair to elect those chairpersons. So what we saw on Friday was very, very significant in this dynamic process of parliamentary democracy, in that the pipeline for sittings has been loaded. The pipeline for sittings has been loaded. So we have more questions to be answered at the next sitting. We will have second reading of bills. We may have the consideration of the supplemental financial paper tabled by the Senior Minister of Finance. And so we will have this ongoing process now where not only more questions will come, but more bills will come for first reading, more motions will migrate, including opposition motions, will migrate onto the other people. But we have to appreciate that to get that first business sitting moving forward outside of the budget, you had to load up the pipeline.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with us. Any final comments you want to make as we wrap up?
Yes, I would ask our viewers, our citizens, to engage more on the parliamentary site, to reach out to me, anybody, to get more information. I am proud of our staff, the clerk and his team. And in particular, I want to commend all of our staff who host the tens of thousands of school children that today pass through the halls of Parliament every single year. It's now tens of thousands passing through. We'll introduce the debating competition, the Speaker's National Youth Debating Competition, and the Speaker's Regional Youth Debating Competition. And we have done over 200 debates in the last 6 years. They have generated viewership among young people, among adults, among members of parliament in the tens of thousands of hits every time we have a debate. So we're reaching more to our people. And another subject could be, or another topic for our parliamentary engagement, public parliamentary engagement might be a good name,
Yeah.
might be what we have done to take parliament more to the people since I was speaker.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much.
And thank you so much, Shakwan.
You've heard there from the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Honorable Mansour Nadir State, connected with us as we continue to bring you more information about Parliament and the National Assembly. Take care.